Now, ever since the Cricket World Cup was instituted in 1975, there have been some memorable results, and this has been a very memorable final. But never before has there been as much drama as we saw last evening in one of the most memorable finals. For the first time ever, a World Cup final that ended in a tie. Now, the Super Over 2 ended in a dead heat, and New Zealand became the first team to lose a World Cup final without losing the game. Now, this didn't matter to hosts England, of course, who picked up their maiden world title, even if on a technicality, their first ever World Cup win. Now we are coming to you with some live visuals of the celebrations after England's victory of the World Cup final. There was jubilation and, of course, heartbreak. Now, after 44 days and 48 games played, it is England who have emerged victorious. Coming to you with these visuals from Lord's from last evening. Fans on the field getting their favourite players to sign autographs, celebrating after England wins. It is, of course, England's first ever Cricket World Cup final win. Now, the fans cheered loudly for every wicket and every boundary of their favourite team. And fans last night witnessed a game that they say will live forever in their memories. Of course, the New Zealand fans were gutted, but they, in true sportsmanship, called it fair play to England, as they reflected on their team's narrow loss on a technicality. There have been some incredible games in this year's World Cup, some big disappointments, and some huge successes. You can see the fans there on the field at Lord's, celebrating with their team. And there with a beautiful overhead shot of Lord's Cricket Stadium, where the hosts England are also the world champions. Now, some are saying this is the best World Cup of all time. And you can see the fans gathering at Lord's to celebrate the victory with England. Now, ever since the Cricket World Cup was instituted in 1975, there have been many memorable results, many memorable finals, but never before has there been as much drama as last evening's English win at the World Cup for the first time. Now in sport, of course, there is a victor and a vanquished. And on Sunday night, at the home of cricket, at the Lord's Cricket Stadium in London, there were no losers, yet England won the biggest title in sport on a technicality. Of course, there were some glum faces among the fans of New Zealand cricket team, but none here where we can see fans of the English cricket team celebrating with their favourite players. Now, England, of course, Kane Williamson won the toss and opted to bat first. The batting form struggled, but they posted a 241 for 8. It was inadequate considering England's batting, but a total nevertheless. And for a second game in a row, we remember that New Zealand's bowlers delivered. England were choked and they did feel the pressure under the dreaded beast of New Zealand as they lost 4 for 86. Now Stokes kept his team in the hunt as the wickets fell, and 15 were needed off that final over, 9 off just 3 balls. And this match, of course, this World Cup final, ended off in a tie for the first in a 50-over World Cup final. Martin Guptill was run out when he was going for the win. He was forced to make that run. And then, unfortunately, this for New Zealand ended in them losing on the technicality. Now we can see those celebrations in England. They had scored more boundaries in the match. And that was the tiebreaker to break the tie. Still coming to you live from Lord's Cricket Grounds in England, where fans were celebrating with the World Cup champions, their English team. And I'm joined by Digvijay Singh, our head of sports.
Yes, Alison, thank you. Some lovely pictures coming in from London England celebrating with their fans. It's been a long time coming. England, the country which actually founded the game of cricket, had to wait all these years. They had to suffer ridicule, and they were the laughing stock of world cricket at the 2015 World Cup, where they failed to go past the group stages. In fact, it was Bangladesh who beat England to clinch that spot in the quarterfinals. Since then, the march to redemption began for English cricket, and what we saw last night was the culmination of that journey. Pictures on your screen right now of members of the English cricket team wearing their shades. Probably it's been a long night. It's been a long night of celebration because it's been a fantastic journey. This English team were always known as the perennial bridesmaids of world cricket. They reached the final of the World Cup in 1979. They reached the final of the World Cup in 1987 in India, but lost by 9 runs to Australia at Kolkata's Eden Gardens. 5 years later, they were in the finals again, this time in Melbourne, but they were beaten by Pakistan, and ever since then it had been one disaster after another. At one point of time, the English team were ranked world number 1 as well in 2012, but they just could not seem to get the formula of one-day cricket going. But since 2015, since that debacle, Andrew Strauss was appointed as director of cricket. He was a former captain as well, and he, along with Owen Morgan, decided to change the complete way England played one-day cricket. They decided for a fearless approach. They decided that irrespective of the situation, they would go out and attack the rival teams. And leading into this World Cup, there were no doubts that England were the team to beat. They had a bit of a stutter as well in the tournament. They lost early in the tournament, but then rebounded, won a lot of matches on the bounce. But then it came down, after that defeat to Sri Lanka and Australia, it came down to winning 2 matches against India and New Zealand to qualify for the semi-finals. They did that in the semi-finals, absolutely thrashed the old rival Australia. And then, Alison, you know what happened last night. One of the greatest games ever played in sport, not just in cricket, perhaps in sport. If you look at all the World Cup finals that have taken place, 1975, 79, 83 onwards, there have been some great upsets. India winning in 83, a great upset. But never has a World Cup final ended in a tie. And that's what happened last night. The game swung either way, you know. All of us watching, clearly bleary-eyed this morning, all of us watching didn't know which way that match was going. Went to a super over, and guess what? A super over, which is sort of a tiebreaker to decide who wins the title. Even that ended in a tie. 15 for England, 15 for New Zealand. England ultimately winning by a technicality that they'd scored more boundaries in the match than New Zealand. It's not the fairest way for a World Cup final to be decided. New Zealand can go back and say, you know what, we didn't lose the World Cup final. We did not lose at any instance in that World Cup final. Yet, at the end of the day, England world champions. We're seeing scenes right now from the Oval in London, one of the other iconic grounds in London. There was a lot of talk about England having a parade. Remember a few months back, Liverpool won the Champions League, a massive parade after they returned from Madrid. It went on for hours and hours, but the ECB made it very clear that they have the Ashes coming up, Australia versus England, which is also a huge task and test ahead for the English cricket team. So clearly they decided no time for parade. At least the good thing is we're seeing pictures of a few fans who've actually made it. England seem to have had a jinx at the top level in world sport. The women's football team lost in the semi-finals last week of the Women's World Cup. The men's football team won in 1966. Since then, they'd never been able to go past the semi-finals, even lost in the semi-finals at the 2018 FIFA World Cup. So finally, in a sense, that jinx coming to an end. The best part about cricket in England is that once the players go off, these small kids can actually go onto the ground and play. And we are seeing those pictures of these young players, budding players coming and trying to, you know, get a piece of the action, getting a photo, maybe an autograph. What they also did was once England reached the final of this World Cup, they actually made it a free-to-air event. It was actually shown live on terrestrial TV as well, so that everyone could just be there and be part of this great moment. And those are the pictures we're seeing right now.
Thank you so much for taking us through that. That is our Head of Sports, David J. Singdio, joining us for all the information on England's first World Cup win. Now, Diggy, take us through some of the highlights of this Cricket World Cup. We know that there have been some big disappointments, but take us through some of the best wins so far.
Well, I would like to start by saying my commiserations to you as well, because a lot was expected of the South African cricket team at this World Cup, but sadly they were one of the second team to get knocked out. When you talk of upsets, it came right at the start. England losing to Pakistan and then Pakistan going on a run as well. I think India losing to New Zealand in the semi-finals was a huge upset. But we saw those fighting qualities of New Zealand in this final as well, didn't we? And ultimately, if you look down at that points table, you would say that the three top teams in world cricket in the last 6 months, which were England, India and Australia, who sort of bounced back into contention, they were the three teams there. New Zealand had a bit of luck their way, and they started off very well, winning 3 matches, but then they ended the group stage with 3 defeats as well. Pakistan took offence. They felt that they should have been in the semi-finals because both they and New Zealand ended on 11 points as well. New Zealand going through a net run rate, but New Zealand just showed why, they are the underdogs in almost every tournament they play. They've been in every ICC World Cup semi-final, if not better, since 2007. They're a team which doesn't have too many stars, but as a team, they remain a team which can beat the best in the world on their day. Yesterday, again, a target of 241 against an England team which scored 397, remind you, 397 in this tournament, scored 300 for fun almost all through the tournament, even leading up to the World Cup since the last Cup, had more than 30-plus scores of 300-plus, even scored 481 against Australia in Nottingham last year as well. But they fought till the very end. They were unlucky. The rub of the green, so to say, didn't go their way, especially right at the end, 15 to get off the final over. I think everyone's seen those pictures and everyone has an opinion on that. 15 to win, Ben Stokes get a 6 and still 9 to win off 3 balls. Goes and tries to go for 2 runs and to keep England alive in the tournament. The throw comes in from the deep. It hits him as he's diving. It hits his bat and goes for 4. England awarded 6 runs. Lots of debate over whether that should have been 5 runs or 6. But then Ben Stokes clearly 3 to win off 2. Run out of the next ball, the match is tied. I think this World Cup was spectacular. The gap did come down between both teams. On your screen right now, Jofra Archer. What a story he has been as well. Jofra Archer actually qualified to play for England only because the rules were changed, and only a couple of months before the World Cup he became eligible. There was a lot of debate after his performance in the IPL and in 20-over cricket that he should be taken into the England team. They didn't name him in the provisional 15. What they did was they gave him a chance to impress in a couple of warm-up series against Ireland and Pakistan. He grabbed his chances, and then in this World Cup actually knocked over quite a few batsmen, knocked many of them off as well. Hit Hashim Amla earlier in the tournament with a bouncer, drew blood from Alex Carey in that semi-final against Australia as well. Got 1 wicket in this match, bowled that last over in the super over. He bowled that over. He was asked to defend 15, went for a few runs, but still managed to do the job. And these are pictures that a lot of these kids sitting here will never forget. I remember a story from 1983. There was a young kid who used to be a John McEnroe fan. His name was Sachin Tendulkar, and there was a Wimbledon match on at that time. He saw that match, went back and saw India win the 1983 World Cup against the odds, against the West Indies, and that put him on a journey to greatness. It instilled in him the love for cricket. A lot of cricketers of that generation were inspired by Kapil Dev's team winning the 1983 World Cup. Hopefully these are the pictures and these are the moments that England fans will remember, and perhaps 8 to 10 years from now we'll see new talent emerge who would go on and then say that we were inspired to take up cricket and become world beaters because of what the English cricket team did on a lovely summer evening at Lord's on the 14th of July 2019.
Now, Diggy, some will say that it is not as sweet a victory as it could have been due to winning on a technicality. What have people been saying about this? How often do teams in cricket win or lose on a technicality?
Technicality, I think this is the first time. I mean, I've followed a fair bit of cricket. Something which comes close, perhaps, is 2007, the first edition of the ICC World T20. India were playing arch rivals Pakistan. That match ended in a tie. And back in the day, because 2020 was a new format, there was a bowl-out. And India won that bowl-out 3-0. It's gone down in history as one of the greatest decisions ever, that you had three non-bowlers, actually spinners, bowling that, while the Pakistanis actually had their frontline bowlers coming and bowling. India won that. After that, they decided that we'll go for a super over, after seeing how the super over started influencing games in T20 cricket as well. Man of the final there, Ben Stokes, single-handedly kept England in the hunt in this ICC final. Lovely story coming in from New Zealand. Ben Stokes is actually born in New Zealand. His father in Madurai there, and his father just gave a quote saying, "I'm probably the most hated man right now in New Zealand." Last 2 years been very difficult for Ben Stokes as well. Remember 2017, he was involved in a brawl outside a pub in Bristol. He was banned for a few months as well, and then recalled to the side. He had a very public, trial which went on. There was question, should he play again, should he not? But credit to this English team and the English team management, I think, because when they decided on a certain set of players to play that aggressive style of cricket, they stuck by them. The only man, perhaps, who was abandoned was Alex Sales, because he failed a drug test for recreational drugs. It was the second time. The first time he'd given the team and a kind of assurance that it could never happen again. But just ahead of the World Cup, he tested positive again and was kicked off the team. It was a decision made by Owen Morgan, the captain, and the senior players. But Ben Stokes, in fact, for him, this is redemption as well. For him to come back and actually play that knock which takes him into sporting immortality. You remember all the men who were man of the match at World Cup finals, be it the West Indian captain Clive Lloyd in 1975, be it Viv Richards 1979, Mohinder Amarnath, who with his dibbly-dobbly bits and pieces bowling actually was man of the final in both the semis and the final in 1983. Then Wasim Akram going past England in 1992. That list is endless. Aravinda de Silva's 100 in 96, and now that list will have Ben Stokes, because clearly that 84 which he got in a pressure situation, New Zealand had applied the choke. At one stage, England were 28 for no loss, lead to 28 for 1, 56 for 1. Around 10 overs didn't go for any runs. England went down to 86 for 4. But then it was Ben Stokes and Johnny Bairstow who put them back on track with a 110-run stand. In a sense, he was that last man standing. Even as wickets fell, you knew that with Ben Stokes there, something could still happen. The moment that match was tied, it was still Stokes who went out and played that super over and put England in a position of strength. So Ben Stokes writing himself into the history books in world cricket as well, Alison.
Yeah, so you have been speaking there about some of the best players of tournament history, and this one, of course, with Stokes with the 84. What are some of the other best players, man of the match in the games that have been played in this tournament?
Well, I think it's been a nice World Cup in that sense. It's not the stars itself who've managed to influence games. I think one of the biggest impacts in this World Cup was Shakib Al Hasan, the Bangladesh batsman, all-rounder in fact, who was promoted up to number 3, got more than 10 wickets in the tournament, scored over 600 runs. Rohit Sharma, India's very own Rohit Sharma, had a rare failure in the semi-finals, but he became the only man to score 5 centuries in this World Cup. David Warner too, coming back after that 1-year ban, came back into international cricket only at the end of March, but all these players had played in the IPL, that got some runs there, and these were these players who actually went and scored a lot of runs. In terms of bowling, you had Mustafizur Rahman from Bangladesh, who got 20 wickets in the tournament. Mitchell Starc broke the record of most wickets ever at a World Cup. Glenn McGrath's record of 2007 was broken by Mitchell Starc, who got 27 wickets in the tournament. In fact, Starc was man of the tournament last time in 2015 when he took 22 wickets in the tournament as Australia won a 5th World Cup crown as well. So in a sense, these were the standout moments, but there were also other players who at some point of time, came up with knocks which helped their team win. And in that way, the margin between all the teams was pretty close. 50-over cricket, over 1 innings and 100 overs, over 2 innings demands a lot more consistency. And I think that consistency was lacking in a lot of teams. That's why we didn't see those teams challenging. Before the World Cup began, there was talk of the West Indies, in fact, being one of the outside favourites to perhaps take a top 4 berth and a berth in the semis. But they struggled. They won just 2 games. South Africa, your team, had a bit of an up-and-down World Cup. They seem to have a certain selection model. The batsmen weren't in form. We saw Pakistan starting off very badly and then going on a run at the end as well. But to win a World Cup, it doesn't matter how well you play over a period of, say, 4 or 5 weeks. You know, you first need to qualify for the semi-finals. That's the first pedestal. And after that, irrespective of where you finish there, you have to carry that form. Look at England. They needed to win 2 straight matches to get into the semi-finals. They were struggling. They were on the verge of getting knocked out. Yet they beat India. Remarkable performance there. Jason Roy coming back. Josh Butler also, getting runs, 100. Johnny Bairstow getting runs there. Clearly, carry that into the next match against the Kiwis. Demolished them, scored 300 again. Scored 300 against Australia as well, the old rivals. So, for England, they had their ups and downs to the tournament. But when it mattered, they got over the line. And that's what is important. You don't forget, at the end of the day, the team which wins the World Cup. You may win it anyway, but when you win that World Cup, you go down in history. And this English team will go down in history because they came into the tournament as favourites. They carried that pressure of expectation. They carried with them the burden of previous campaigns. But when it came down to that situation, they were ready for it and they got over the line.
Thank you so much for that, Vijay Singh Dio, our head of sports right here at WION, joining us on England's victory in the World Cup final. And of course, congratulations to England.